Hello everyone and welcome back to the Aether Hub. I'm Simon, bringing you more Magic the Gathering lore. Today we have the release of the second chapter for Zendikar Rising storyline. If you missed chapter 1, you can find a video I've made breaking it down in the description below or appearing on your screens right now. Where we stand in the story is that Nahiri and Nissa both have different ideas on how to best heal the world of Zendikar, their world. While Nahiri looks to capture and use an ancient core relic with immense power to kill the Roil, the tectonic elemental forces that torment denizens there, Nissa seeks to heal and calm from within, looking to keep in place the elemental soul of Zendikar, the very force she's befriended, while keeping the plane itself wild and free. Neither could see eye to eye, and now it's a race for the fate of Zendikar. Will Nahiri invoke the powers of the past to bring about change? Or will Nissa prevail in protecting what Zendikar has become? Let's find out in Chapter 2, Race to the MURASA SKYCLAVE. Don't forget to hit that notification bell so you never miss out when a new chapter is released. Nahiri learned much during her first dive into the SKYCLAVEs of the ancient core that were her ancestors, chief among them being how difficult a challenge this was going to be alone. Despite being an ancient planeswalker with the power to manipulate stone to her will, the perils of the SKYCLAVEs would be too dangerous to embark without help. Nissa proved this. Though they didn't see eye to eye on the best way to heal Zendikar, Nissa proved to Nahiri that this was not a journey she could survive on her own. She carried with her the key to healing Zendikar, the object that could unlock the very power to quell the Roil of this world. This relentless, waking elemental force of Zendikar's soul had tormented the denizens of this plane ever since it was awoken by the Eldrazi's devouring presence. Now, Nahiri hoped this key and her ultimate goal, the lithoform core, could fix that. She travels to the worn-torn city of Seagate, once the site of the Gatewatch's almost victory over the released Eldrazi titan Ulamog that eventually saw Seagate almost wiped off the face of Zendikar. Since then, Seagate has been rebuilt, but its buildings and people still wore the scars of that titanic conflict. But Nahiri wasn't here to reminisce. She was here to find adventurers, those with the skills to help her conquer the SKYCLAVEs. Long ago, we're not really sure when, Nahiri had put down an investment to start a guild hall for adventurers on Zendikar to meet with potential clients. She now was looking for a return on that investment, so she sat down with the 4 best adventurers the hall had to offer, looking to hire them all for a job. There was Akiri, a famous line-slinging climber, a core of renowned skill and success rate. Aura, another core, this one a male cleric with a long white beard and stoic look on his face. Kaza, a small wizard with an affinity for fire, known for torching an entire Eldrazi brood pod. And finally, a merfolk named Zareth, whose body language projected that he didn't trust Nahiri, a rogue who's earned his title as the Trickster. Everyone in this group were highly skilled. They've worked jobs together in the past, each with resounding success for their benefactors. This is the team Nahiri needed if her dream of healing Zendikar would ever become a reality. However, this group was weary. They didn't just accept a job out of the kindness of their hearts. Skepticism was their currency. Zareth felt this more strongly than the others. Before accepting a job, no matter how highly coveted, the group put the benefactor to a test. A simple card game, which Nahiri agreed to play. The game appeared to be easy, although she could sense there were some subtle rules not laid out to her. It was a card game in a sense, but one that would prove who had been on more impressive adventures. The idea being that if the benefactor has indeed achieved great things, this latest journey was sure to be worth their while. The game also had traces of magical elements. The cards they used would appear to the player telling a true story, so lying wasn't really an option. If your story is more impressive, you'll win that card, and the point is yours. The winner would be the one with the most cards. Easy peasy. While various members of this party recant tales of theft, cunning, bravery, and strength, Nahiri ultimately came out the winner. She won a card for her story of besting a mentor, a friend, in a world-shattering conflict. The group, however, wasn't familiar with such an epic battle, to which Nahiri informed them that it didn't take place in this realm. A dubious claim, but the card flung to her hand revealing the truth. The group was informed of Nahiri's abilities, but the claim seemed too outlandish to be true. But these cards don't lie. However, the true victory for Nahiri came when a card revealed the word strength. Rather than describe some great feat, she turned all the cards on the table to stone and commanded them to fly into her hand. Her power, this strength, clear for all to see. Nahiri had won. She had her party. The merfolk Xerath couldn't shake this uneasy feeling. Something about this Nahiri was unsettling. Her goals were vague, spouting sensational claims to heal Zendikar to a state before this war with the Eldrazi. A war that's claimed so many of their friends and loved ones. If she couldn't heal those scars, what scars was she referring to? What had this party just agreed to accomplish? Xerath spent his final night before the start of their campaign drinking, speaking with the head of the expedition house of his worries, sharing that the newly uncovered Skyclaves, relics of the past Nahiri wishes to return to Zendikar, don't look any better than the rubble that the Eldrazi had left behind in their wake. A world Nahiri would again see covered in fortresses and armies, brimming with borders, lacking all of the freedoms the denizens of this ravaged land had finally grown to enjoy. This mission, it was unsettling. He asked the expedition house leader, a woman named Kazina, to promise him that she would find an alternate buyer for this lithoform core. Should this mission be trouble, the trickster wanted to prevent a tragedy, if at all possible. The next day, the group headed out and quickly arrived to the region of MURASA, a swampy lowland spotted with towering cliffs that just barely hid the newly risen MURASA Skyclave. The very place the key Nahiri carried spoke of as the home to this lithoform core. Though new Skyclaves are typically rife with potential adventurers looking to plunder undisturbed treasures, this one seemed barren, and for good reason. Kaza, the wizard of the party, remarked at how it was possibly the most treacherous climb she had ever seen from a Skyclave. Anyone who had tried to reach the surface most likely died, while smarter, more veteran adventurers stayed clear of its obvious danger. This was gonna be tricky. Luckily, their confidence didn't waver. They were the best company on Zendikar after all. Before they ascended, Xerath, keeping a close eye on Nahiri, kept pestering her with questions down to the very smallest detail. Questions of her plans and of the power she sought. Nahiri gave very little away, answering either vaguely or just not at all, never tipping her hand. Still, Nahiri offered freely an example of the lithoform core's power, the very power that would heal Zendikar. As a cat beast leaped from the shadows ready to pounce on the party, Xerath specifically, Nahiri quickly brought forth the key and used its immense power. The group stood in shock at its blinding light and Nahiri's almost supernatural reflexes. Even this group of skilled adventurers were taken by surprise of this hunting beast. But there it stood, solid as stone, shattering to sand at Nahiri's touch. Xerath's heart skipped a beat at this display. This thing was dangerous. And so was Nahiri, confirming what he had long speculated. While his party also feared that their benefactor could turn on them, their contract was already signed, and they prepared to climb. However, the leader of this company, the core Akiri, the line master, now fully realized the discomfort Xerath felt since taking on this contract. While the others prepared to make the ascent, Akiri investigated further this beast obliterated by this relic's power. The black sand that was all that remained of this animal had been carried by the wind, resting beneath a tree. As if alive, hunting, this dust clung to the trunk of the tree, discoloring it, killing it. It reminded Akiri so much of the corrupting spread of the Eldrazi's presence within their wake, killing the world, leaving nothing but a chalky dust where life had once thrived. This corruption was familiar, but still very different. What did it mean? What was it capable of? Akiri now shared her friend's reservations. She would be keeping a close eye on this Nahiri. Jace had finally made his way to Seagate after planeswalking to Zendikar. He was looking for Nissa Ravane, his friend and fellow Gatewatch member who had just recently left his home on Ravnica, asking for his aid. Jace in that moment hesitated before Nissa departed, despite knowing full well that he would help her the moment she asked. Still, this left Jace wandering the streets of the great city, the site of their titanic battle and ultimate failure against the Eldrazi Titans Ulamog and Kozilek. The structures here had been repaired, but the people remained scarred. It's the same thing Nahiri noticed upon visiting Seagate herself. Had the Gatewatch anticipated the events of this war, worked harder, maybe more lives would have been saved, maybe Seagate wouldn't have been destroyed. Regrets bloomed, but hope still remained, as passerbys, veterans of the conflict, recognized him as the hero he was, one of the great saviors of Zendikar. He shared in their optimism, but also in their sense of loss. While looking for Nissa, asking people and scanning thoughts for those who may have seen either her or Nahiri, Jace stumbled upon the same expedition house Nahiri had recruited her party from. Being as famous on Zendikar as he was, he bought the attention of the house leader, Ksenia, directly. Once in a private room, Jace pressed her for information on the whereabouts of Nahiri after discovering that she had just been here with another group. Despite the company's strict policy on confidentiality, Ksenia did let slip that she worried for her best adventurers that were out with Nahiri, pulling on the feelings Xerath had shared with her and pairing them with information that Jace just provided about Nahiri's true intentions for Zendikar. Jace refused to read the mind of an innocent, and Ksenia had to respect the privacy of her client. However, she did pass to him a message, only a single word: MURASA. It was where Jace's journey was to start. Jace makes his way to MURASA, looking up at the same SKYCLAVE Nahiri had days prior. Nahiri's lithomancy likely made easy work of the climb. Jace wouldn't be as lucky. Speaking of luck, or lack thereof, as he stepped upon the marshy shores of MURASA, the Mind Mage is immediately attacked by a giant crustacean. In fighting an animal, mental tricks always seem to fare worse than a humanoid opponent. They're just so much easier to trick with dull senses. This crab, though, with claws the size of wagons, saw right through each of Jace's tricks. It smelled through his invisibility, easily discerned which of his clones were doppelgangers. He couldn't even dominate or crush the crab's mind because it was already being possessed by sentient mind-controlling mushrooms. Yeah, talk about bad luck. Luckily, a helping hand is never far on Zendikar, as a tree lifts itself from the soft soil and, using its massive roots, crushes the crab monster over and over. Looking over to Jace as to say, "You're welcome." It wasn't another monster, but an elemental, and that meant, yep, Nissa. She had been watching and anticipating Jace's arrival and decided to lend a hand, finally meeting with a friend she knew she could count on. Nissa and Jace had their disagreements. They had things they couldn't relate to. Jace admitted that he could never feel the same way as Nissa does about these elemental beings, not sharing in this bond that she shares with them. But if she cares so much for them, then Jace is here to help protect them. First step, though, is getting up to the SKYCLAVE itself, a task Jace from a previous life would have solidly declined. They would have to use vines summoned by Nissa, hard physical work that Jace couldn't just think his way out of, along with a high chance of failure and even death. But this isn't Jace's old life. This is the Jace who survived his adventures on Ixalan, discovering who he could be if he only acted. This was the Jace who had learned so much about himself and life, thanks in large part to Vraska, someone who he owed a great debt, someone who he truly, deeply cared for. With that lifetime of change, Jace was ready. They would answer this call to adventure. Well guys, I'm loving this story so far. Just the way these free articles are written simply are superior to those that we've been paying for recently in MTG lore. Of course, if you're interested in reading the full article yourself, a link is provided in the description below, along with a link to Chapter 1 of Zendikar Rising's story that I also covered in video form. In Chapter 2, we see more of Nahiri's drive to heal Zendikar at all costs, and what that healing could actually look like for Zendikar. This relic, the lithoform core, can stop the Roil, but it corrupts and distorts the land just as the creepy nothingness of the Eldrazi had. Nahiri is blind to its inherent dangers, singularly focused on restoring what she remembers Zendikar to be at any cost. It's now up to Nissa and Jace to stop her. Anyway guys, I want to thank you all so much for watching and following the story of Zendikar Rising with me here on the Aether Hub. It means a great deal as all of you continue to show how great this community can be. Remember, if you enjoyed the video, make sure you leave it a like, as well as leaving a comment on what you think of the story thus far. And don't forget to tick that notification bell so you can follow as future chapters are released. As always guys, thank you all so much for watching, and until next time, see ya!